In the world of fame and fortune, not all stories have a happy ending. Some celebrities met untimely and disturbing deaths, their fates marked by mystery and violence. Today, we dive into the chilling tales of the horrible fates that befell these stars. Phil Hartman, a comedy legend and beloved Saturday Night Live star, was born on September 24, 1948, in Ontario, Canada. Growing up in a large family, Phil quickly learned to use his humor to stand out. At the age of 10, his family moved to the United States, and his quick wit and charm made him popular among his peers. Though he didn't know it yet, performing was in his future. Phil pursued higher education at California State University, majoring in graphic design and taking a public speaking course. His creative talents extended beyond comedy. He designed album covers for several notable bands during the 1960s. Immersed in the rock and roll lifestyle, he spent time on the road with artists, further fueling his creativity. In 1975, Phil attended an improv comedy show by the Groundlings.
This. Well, that's my normal voice.
Great.
And it goes something like this.
Now number, 17.
17 is one of my favorites. It's kind of a...
When the group invited audience members to participate, Phil immediately knew this was his calling. He joined the troupe and began collaborating with future stars like Will Ferrell, Lisa Kudrow, and Paul Rubens. Phil even helped develop the Pee Wee Herman character with Rubens before the two had a falling out. Phil's career took a massive leap in 1986 when he joined Saturday Night Live. His impressions of Bill Clinton and Frank Sinatra became iconic, and his peers affectionately nicknamed him Glue for his ability to hold the show together. Phil won an Emmy for his contributions to SNL's writing team and cemented his place as one of the show's finest comedic talents. While Phil's professional life flourished, his personal life was more complicated. After 2 failed marriages, he met Brin Omdal in 1985. Stunning and ambitious, Brin dreamed of her own Hollywood career. The couple married in 1987 and had 2 children, Sean and Bergen. To outsiders, their family life seemed ideal, but those close to them saw signs of trouble. Phil avoided confrontation, while Brin often expressed her frustrations explosively. She struggled with substance abuse, and friends noticed the strain this put on their relationship. Despite these challenges, Phil continued to thrive in his career, starring in the sitcom News Radio and lending his voice to The Simpsons. By 1998, their marriage had grown increasingly volatile. On May 27th, Phil and Brin marked their 11th wedding anniversary, but the day ended in tragedy. After spending the evening apart, Brin returned home in the early hours, intoxicated and under the influence of cocaine. A heated argument erupted, but Phil, exhausted, went to bed. Before 3 a.m., tensions in the Hartman household reached a devastating breaking point. Brin, heavily intoxicated and under the influence of cocaine, was deeply upset. In a moment of intense emotional turmoil, she grabbed one of Phil's guns and shot him as he lay asleep in their bedroom. The sound of the gunshots echoed through the house, waking their 9-year-old son, Sean. Confused and scared, he thought the noise might have been a door slamming. Venturing out of his room, he found his mother crying uncontrollably, her emotions spiraling out of control. In a panic, Brin drove to her friend Ron Douglas's house and confessed to the crime. Initially, Ron didn't believe her, thinking it was another dramatic outburst. However, he followed her back to the house and, upon seeing Phil's body, called the police. As officers surrounded the home, Brin locked herself in the bedroom. Moments later, she took her own life, leaving their children orphaned. The news of Phil Hartman's death shocked the world. Fans and colleagues mourned the loss of a comedic genius, while speculation about what led to the tragedy swirled. Toxicology reports revealed that Brin had alcohol, cocaine, and traces of the antidepressant Zoloft in her system. The Hartman family later filed a lawsuit against the manufacturer of Zoloft, alleging inadequate warnings about its side effects. Phil and Brin's children, Sean and Bergen, went to live with relatives in Wisconsin, taking on new names to protect their privacy. As they grew older, they carried forward Phil's legacy in their own ways. Sean became an artist and musician, while Bergen pursued a career in communications and business. In 2015, Bergen made a special appearance at SNL's 40th anniversary celebration to honor her father. The legacy of Phil Hartman continues to shine, not only through his children, but also through the countless characters and laughter he gave to the world. Though his life ended in heartbreak, his talent and kindness remain unforgettable. As we reflect on the devastating fate of Phil Hartman, one might wonder what drives a person to the breaking point. It's often a mix of emotional turmoil, addiction, and hidden struggles. In the case of Selena Quintanilla, the story takes another shocking turn, showing just how far some people can go when trust is betrayed. But these aren't isolated incidents. The world of fame, while full of glory, can also be fraught with darkness. And unfortunately, some of the most talented and beloved figures in the world have had their lives abruptly ended by violence, jealousy, and betrayal. But what exactly pushed Yolanda Salivar over the edge? Stay tuned as we dive deeper into the disturbing and heartbreaking events that led to Selena's untimely death. In 1991, Yolanda Salivar first witnessed Selena Quintanilla perform live in concert. Salivar wasn't a fan at the time. She preferred country music, but she attended the show in San Antonio after her niece invited her. However, after seeing Selena's undeniable stage presence, Salivar became a fan. Once the show ended, Salivar was eager to buy some merchandise to commemorate the night. But when she discovered there were no official products available, an idea formed in her mind: to start a Selena fan club. There are differing accounts of how persistent Salivar was in reaching out to Selena's family, but what's certain is that in June 1991, Salivar was given permission to create and lead the official Selena fan club. Under her leadership, the club quickly grew, attracting thousands of members. As Salivar worked hard to expand the fan club, she gradually integrated herself further into Selena and her family's lives. The Quintanillas trusted her more and more, eventually entrusting her with financial responsibilities. Selena even became close to Salivar, often confiding in her and taking advice from her. The two developed a close bond, with Selena even crediting Salivar for encouraging her to pursue higher education. In 1994, Selena's career was at its peak, having just won her first Grammy Award for Best Mexican American Album. That year, Selena opened 2 boutiques, Selena Etc., in Corpus Christi and San Antonio. These stores, which sold Selena merchandise and clothes she designed, were immensely popular among fans. Salivar was given the responsibility of managing these boutiques, marking a significant promotion. But as Salivar's new role grew, so did troubling behavior. Employees at the boutiques began to complain about Salivar's possessiveness over Selena, claiming she was constantly trying to keep Selena isolated from others. Some co-workers even quit, unable to tolerate Salivar's vindictive management style. In fact, one former roommate moved out of her apartment after just 2 weeks, disturbed by the shrine Salivar had created in her home in Selena's honor. Despite these troubling signs, Selena remained loyal to Salivar, defending her when others criticized her behavior. However, in January 1995, a troubling discovery was made. Members of the Selena fan club had been complaining that they never received the merchandise they had paid for. Abraham Quintanilla, Selena's father, started investigating the matter and uncovered evidence of Salivar's financial mismanagement. Unpaid bills, forged checks, and missing funds pointed to embezzlement. Worse still, Salivar had a history of similar behavior, having been accused of embezzling funds at previous jobs. On March 9, 1995, Selena, Abraham, and Suzette Quintanilla confronted Salivar about the embezzlement. Salivar failed to provide satisfactory explanations, and the Quintanillas made the decision to fire her. The next day, Salivar showed up at work, but Abraham promptly kicked her out. That firing seemed to drive Salivar to desperation. She purchased a .38 caliber gun on March 11th, and by March 13th, she had obtained the weapon. Despite being fired, Salivar still had access to important financial records. Over the next few weeks, she used these documents as leverage to delay her termination. On March 15th, Selena and her husband, Chris Perez, agreed to meet Salivar at the Days Inn to retrieve the missing records. During the meeting, Salivar showed them the gun, claiming it was for protection. Selena, unfazed, suggested that Salivar could manage stores in Mexico, which seemed to calm Salivar. She returned the gun, and things appeared to settle. But the situation took a tragic turn on March 31st. Selena met with Salivar once again, this time alone, to retrieve the final set of missing documents. When Selena confronted Salivar about the missing papers, the two began to argue. In a fit of rage, Salivar pulled out the gun and shot Selena in the back. The bullet hit a major artery, and Selena, bleeding heavily, stumbled out of the room. She collapsed in the lobby, her final words, "Yolanda, room 158," before she passed out from blood loss. Selena was rushed to the hospital, but the damage was too severe. Despite efforts to save her, she was declared clinically brain dead and was pronounced dead at 1:05 p.m. Meanwhile, Salivar, in a state of hysteria, sat in her red pickup truck in the hotel parking lot. Armed with the same gun, she threatened to kill herself. A standoff with the police lasted for 9 hours. Salivar demanded updates on Selena's condition, and the negotiators, fearing her unstable state, chose not to tell her the heartbreaking truth. After hours of negotiation, Salivar finally surrendered to the police. The world was in shock. Fans gathered in grief, holding candlelight vigils across the nation. In Corpus Christi, thousands lined up to pay their respects to Selena, many of them questioning whether the closed casket was really hers. To quell the rumours, Selena's family opened the casket briefly, showing Selena's body and silencing the doubts. Nearly 60,000 fans passed by to bid their farewells. In October 1995, after just 2 hours of deliberation, Yolanda Salivar was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, with no chance of parole until 2025. Salivar has continued to claim that the shooting was an accident, even requesting a new trial in 2019.
The first ship sank on December 5th, 1664, with 81 passengers on board. There was only one survivor. His name was Hugh Williams.
The ocean is a graveyard of forgotten names and lost ships, but some stories refuse to sink. Among them is the eerie legend of Hugh Williams, a name that seems cursed, yet impossibly lucky at the same time. Throughout history, the sea has claimed countless lives, swallowing vessels whole and leaving behind only whispers of their fate. And yet, scattered across the centuries, there exist a handful of shipwrecks with an uncanny similarity. Each had a single survivor, and each of these survivors bore the same name, Hugh Williams. The first recorded instance of this baffling phenomenon dates back to 1664. A ship navigating the perilous Menai Strait found itself at the mercy of a brutal storm. The channel, notorious for its unpredictable tides and treacherous waters, became a watery tomb for every soul on board, save for one. As wreckage drifted among the waves and the last cries of the doomed sailors were swallowed by the howling wind, one man defied fate itself. The lone survivor? A sailor named Hugh Williams, who against all reason emerged from the catastrophe unscathed. If this had been a singular event, it might have been dismissed as mere luck, an extraordinary but ultimately forgettable tale. Yet fate, it seemed, was not finished with the name Hugh Williams. Over a century later, in 1785, another vessel met disaster in the very same treacherous waters. The sea showed no mercy as it consumed the ship and all aboard, except, impossibly, for one man. He alone washed ashore, the only living soul among the wreckage. His name? Hugh Williams. The strange recurrence of this name sent ripples of intrigue through maritime communities, but with no logical explanation, it was simply regarded as a bizarre twist of fate. Then, As if determined to cement itself as one of the ocean's great unsolved mysteries, the legend continued. In 1820, yet another ship was claimed by the deep, its passengers and crew lost to the relentless tides. As the wreckage bobbed on the surface, a miracle unfolded once again. Amid the devastation, a single man lived to tell the tale. And in keeping with the eerie pattern that had begun over a century prior, his name was none other than Hugh Williams. With 3 shipwrecks spanning over 150 years, each following the same inexplicable pattern, the legend of Hugh Williams took on a life of its own. Some regarded it as a bizarre anomaly, an unbroken thread woven through time, linking these men in ways beyond comprehension. Others pointed out that Hugh Williams was not an uncommon name in Britain, offering a rational explanation for what seemed like an otherwise supernatural event. Even so, logical reasoning does little to dull the sense of mystery surrounding this peculiar string of survivals. Could there be some unseen force at work, shielding these men from death while condemning those around them? Or was the sea itself playing an elaborate and cruel trick, ensuring that the name Hugh Williams would forever be tethered to maritime disaster? Some have speculated that the legend became so well known among sailors that in moments of desperation, those facing an impending wreck might have given the name Hugh Williams in a bid for survival, hoping to align themselves with whatever strange fate had protected the others before them. Whether it was pure coincidence, destiny, or the manifestation of an ancient superstition, one thing is certain. The legend refuses to fade, drifting through history like a ghost ship on the tide. But the ocean's mysteries don't end there. If the story of Hugh Williams is an unsettling case of fate repeating itself, our next tale is even stranger, a story where survival challenges all logic and reason. It's a tale of a man who should have perished in the freezing Atlantic, yet somehow lived to tell his story. His brush with death was unlike anything seen before, pushing the very limits of human endurance. And his secret? Something no survival guide would ever dare to recommend. Charles Joen wasn't a man easily shaken. As the chief baker aboard the Titanic, he was responsible for feeding the massive ship's crew and passengers. But on the fateful night of April 14th, 1912, when an iceberg tore through the hull, he did something no survival manual would ever recommend. He drank. While others scrambled for lifeboats in sheer panic, he remained surprisingly composed. He instructed his kitchen staff to bring bread and supplies for the passengers already being loaded into boats. When their job was done, his crew fled to save themselves. But Joen? He calmly poured himself a stiff drink. As the ship's bow dipped lower into the sea, he made his way to the upper decks. Instead of fighting for a spot on a lifeboat, he helped others board, especially women and children, before stepping aside. As far as he was concerned, he had done his duty. His own survival wasn't a priority. Still, with nowhere else to go, he went back inside and had more whiskey. By then, the great liner was entering its final moments. Water surged through the decks. The stern lifted high into the air, tilting at an impossible angle. Furniture, luggage, and even people tumbled downward into the freezing sea. Jochen held on tight to the railings. Then, as the ship began its final plunge, he made his move. Instead of jumping too soon and risking being crushed, he rowed the sinking vessel down. At the last possible moment, just before the stern disappeared beneath the waves, he stepped off into the icy Atlantic, making sure to avoid the deadly suction that pulled so many others to their doom. Most who hit the water that night didn't last long. The temperature was 28 degrees Fahrenheit, -2 degrees Celsius, cold enough to shut down a person's body in minutes. Survivors later described the horrific sounds of people screaming, thrashing, then suddenly going silent as hypothermia set in. Yet somehow, Jochen kept swimming. He didn't freeze, didn't pass out, didn't panic. He later claimed that despite the lethal cold, he barely felt it at all. His secret? The alcohol in his system. Doctors later speculated that his heavy drinking had prevented his body from going into complete shock, slowing the onset of hypothermia just enough for him to survive. His constant movement in the water also played a role, keeping his circulation going while countless others slipped into unconsciousness. After nearly 2 hours in the frigid sea, he spotted lifeboat 12 in the distance. The last of his strength, he paddled toward it. The crew was hesitant. Was he even alive? But when they pulled him aboard, he was conscious and still alert, though his limbs were numb. Against every possible odd, he had survived. Jochen became one of the few men rescued from the water that night. Unlike many survivors who suffered severe frostbite or lifelong health problems, he recovered almost immediately. Just hours later, when they reached the rescue ship Carpathia, he was already walking around as if nothing had happened. But fate wasn't finished with him. Instead of leaving the sea behind, Jochen continued working on ships for decades. He outlived most of his fellow Titanic survivors and went on to live a long life on the water. Then, after surviving one of history's deadliest maritime disasters, the man who had drunkenly cheated death eventually died at sea many years later. His final moments were nothing like the Titanic's chaos, no icy water, no desperate struggle, just the quiet, steady rocking of the ocean, bringing his life full circle in the most poetic way possible. The ocean is a place of both merciless destruction and inexplicable survival. The legend of Hugh Williams leaves us questioning fate, while Charles Jochen's survival challenges everything we know about endurance. Were these men simply lucky, or was there something more at play? Whether guided by destiny or sheer chance, their stories remain among the strangest in maritime history. In the end, the sea takes many, but for a lucky few, it seems to give something back.